So this has been a really hot topic in the Linux community the last few days, and that topic is choice. The topic of choice. Specifically, the choices that we present would be new to Linux users. And the reason this topic is being discussed so much lately is because of an interview that Jason Evangelho recently had over at the Linux for Everyone podcast. Jason interviewed Alan Pope, aka Popey of Canonical, and Jason asked Popey the following question.
Do you think there's anything that needs to happen to have just a complete sea change in user perception and adoption of desktop Linux?
Okay, do you want the controversial answer?
Whatever answer you want to give me.
Okay, I'll give you the controversial answer.
Good.
Stop making other distros and only focus on Ubuntu. There's your controversial answer is forget all the other distros.
Yes.
Now that comment by Alan caused some people to get their panties in a real twist. I mean, some people really lost their minds because, how dare someone that works at Canonical suggest in a joking manner, smiling, that we should be presenting Ubuntu as the only option to users. How dare he, right? Well, those of you that are upset, I have plenty to say about those people, the ones that just lost their minds over that comment. But I'm going to table that discussion just for a moment because first, I want to give my thoughts on what Alan actually said. I am in 100% agreement with what Alan Pope just said. In fact, I've been practicing what Alan said since I switched to Linux on the desktop many, many years ago. When people come to Linux, one of the things that scares them the most is choice. We have so much choice. They don't understand it all. They've never been presented with the kind of choice, the kind of freedom that we have in Linux. That choice, that freedom, it can be paralyzing to the new to Linux user. The new Linux user suddenly has hundreds of choices as far as Linux distributions to run, hundreds of choices as far as desktop environments and window managers to use, and so on. How could anyone that is completely uninformed about Linux, the new Linux user is completely uninformed, how can they make these choices? How can they decide on the software that they need to run when there are thousands and thousands of choices out there? And again, they're uninformed. How can they make a rational decision on what they should be using? The short answer, they can't make that decision. You, as the person presenting Linux to them, should make that decision for them. And the distribution that you should give them should be Ubuntu. It's the distribution that I typically install on any new Linux user's machine. So why Ubuntu? Well, the reasons why you should give someone Ubuntu, by far, it's the most popular Linux distribution on the desktop. As far as desktop Linux, Ubuntu is king. Now, popularity itself, that doesn't necessarily mean that much, but being popular does have some nice side effects, some side benefits. Because Ubuntu is so popular, when a new Linux user that's on Ubuntu searches for an answer to a Linux question, 95 times out of 100, the documentation, the answer they find, it's going to involve Ubuntu. It's going to be Ubuntu-centric documentation because so many people use Ubuntu. There's so much documentation out there about Ubuntu. The Ubuntu forums are massive. They have millions and millions of posts on the Ubuntu forums. The Ask Ubuntu Stack Exchange is also massive. So many hosting companies offer Ubuntu servers, so much of their documentation is Ubuntu-centric. And with so many people using Ubuntu, asking a question in a forum or in IRC, you're much more likely to get that question answered very quickly than asking a question about Joe Bob's OS that he just launched last week over on SourceForge. Another real plus for Ubuntu is the fact that they have an LTS version. LTS, for those that don't know, stands for long-term support. So every 2 years, Ubuntu releases a new long-term support release, and that version, that LTS version, is supported for up to 10 years. Think about that. 10 years of support on a Linux distribution. That's massive. So if I install Ubuntu LTS on somebody's machine, and if I never see that person or that computer ever again, I know that the OS that I put on that computer probably will outlast that computer. Also, Ubuntu is a static release model rather than a rolling release model, and that's important for a new user. That means there's a lot less updates, which means breakages should be much rarer. And honestly, most computer users are never going to update their machines anyway, and on Ubuntu, that's fine. If you go months or even years without updating that Ubuntu LTS, the machine's still going to run just fine. And if I happen to come across this person and their machine again, and it's been a few months or even a couple of years and they have a massive update pending, I'll take care of it just in case anything breaks. But the likelihood of anything breaking, even after a very long time of not updating, is pretty low on Ubuntu. By contrast, rolling releases, they must be updated very frequently. Going weeks or months without updating is extremely bad because on a rolling release system, when you finally do that update after a few weeks or a few months, you're going to have hundreds, maybe even thousands of packages that are needing to update. The potential for breakage is much greater. So what I've always done is kind of what Alan Pope suggests, and that is what I do is I keep a USB key with Ubuntu LTS on it, the latest Ubuntu LTS. I have it in my laptop bag. If I go somewhere with my laptop, I have a USB key with Ubuntu on it. So if I come across somebody that's inquiring about Linux, I show them Ubuntu LTS on the live USB key. If they like what they see, I can install it on their machine. I never mention other distributions, not even the distribution I run. By the way, I don't actually run Ubuntu, just to get that out of the way. I don't mention any other distributions. I never ever showed them the DistroWatch site. DistroWatch, to a new user, it really shouldn't exist. Don't present DistroWatch to them. Actually, for experienced Linux users, DistroWatch really shouldn't exist. It's a horrible site. It's garbage, but that's a whole other issue. In my opinion, the best recipe for success is to present the new user one distro with one desktop and just leave it at that. Perhaps they will do some research on their own. They'll find out that there are other distros out there, other desktop environments, whatever it is they want to get into. If they want to do that research, they'll do it on their own. If they never want to investigate that stuff, that's fine too, but let them work all of that out on their own. If you present them all of this choice, all of this freedom on the very first day you start talking to them about Linux, I promise you, you're going to lose them. They will see Linux as this disorganized cabal, and they're going to go running back to Windows or Mac. And you should never push your own Linux distribution onto the new Linux user. This isn't a team sport, right? You don't win anything by converting someone over to your distribution of choice. And I think that's the problem with this, is so many of you guys have this my team versus your team mindset. And those are the people that I think are the ones out there losing their minds about somebody like Alan Pope and the comment he made, and I'm sure some of those people are going to be upset at this video I'm making. If you are a Red Hat fanboy, installing Ubuntu on a new user's machine, guess what? It doesn't reflect on you in any way, right? It doesn't reflect on you, your opinions, what you think about Red Hat as a company, what you think about Canonical as a company. It has nothing to do with anything, right? It's just, you see this new user, what's the best choice for them? It's probably Ubuntu. You just put it on their machine. Whether you run Ubuntu, whether you like Ubuntu, whether you prefer some other distribution, it doesn't matter. This isn't about you, right? This should not be about you. If you use Arch, by the way, installing Ubuntu for someone doesn't reflect poorly on you or on Arch Linux, right? The distro fanboys out there, you guys do more to harm our community than any other group, because you actually drive people away. You really do. And the same can be said with desktop environment snobs. GNOME is the only desktop environment worth using. KDE is the only desktop environment worth using. Don't come to a brand new to Linux user spouting that garbage. I promise you, you're going to run them straight back to Windows. Again, present them one option. Don't mention any other choices, even if the option you present them, again, is not the one you personally choose. This isn't about you. And you guys have real issues, you distro fanboys out there. I'm going to make some of you guys mad, but if you think that the quality of your particular Linux distribution, your Linux distribution of choice, if you think the quality of that Linux distribution is somehow directly related to how many people use it, then you have some real mental issues that you really need to work out. And I'm being serious here. If you need others to validate your Linux distro choice, then something is not right with you, and it's not tech related. So guys, go out there, burn those USB keys, stick them in a laptop bag or put them on a keychain, keep it with you where you can always get to it really quickly. And when you come across a potential new Linux user, you're prepared. You're prepared to help them start on a successful Linux journey. Now, before I go, I need to thank a few special people. This show was produced by Michael, Mitchell, Chris, DJ, Donnie, Dylan, George, Haplo, Nate, Lambda, Omri, Rob, Sean, and Willie, the producers of the show. These guys, they're my highest tiered patrons over on Patreon. I also want to thank all these ladies and gentlemen, all these names you're seeing on the screen right now. These are all my supporters over on Patreon. Without each and every one of those guys, the channel wouldn't be possible. If you'd like to support my work, you'll find me over on Patreon. All right, guys. Peace.